Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me. It feels a bit strange. Like I can't hear myself, but hey. Um, Welcome to the conversation of Eco-Chic sustainability in Africa. My name is Jessica Ramoshaba. I will be leading this conversation with these beautiful ladies. Um, just to give you the background of what inspired this conversation, I think championing sustainable development SDG 12, it's important that we start looking into responsible consumption and production. And I just thought it would be great that we fit in eco-chic in all of that, because obviously from a consumer point of view, people still love buying beautiful clothes. They still want to wear things that I guess they feel like themselves in, and chic, I think is the word that people normally use. So yeah, so I think just to keep that in mind while we're discussing this, that at the end of the day, we're trying to see how we can reduce overconsumption, and by 2030, so that we have I guess, a sustainable future and a sustainable environment with using sustainable patterns and materials and all of that. So, like I said, I'm Jessica Ramoshaba. I'm the founder of Fouura. What we do at Fouura, I am interested in looking at sustainability from a consumer point of view. I used to be a fashion editor, and from that point of view, I know how women love clothes and how they love to look beautiful. But with sustainability coming into the space, I wondered how would that affect a woman's wardrobe, and who would be educating these women in knowing what to, what they should be buying, and they should be wearing, and how they should be wearing it, and the importance of materials in their wardrobes, and how, I guess, in a sustainable future, if you want to call it, how wearing clothing means. So that's what we do. So I'm going to give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves, and if you could also add what eco-chic Africa means in your landscape. Anyone can start.
Okay, I can go ahead.
Okay.
So my name is Danayi Madondo. I am the founder and creative director of an independent Zimbabwean fashion brand. It's a slow fashion brand, and we use fashion as a vehicle to narrate contemporary, nuanced narratives that have a cultural undertone about them. And in terms of eco-chic and what that means to me specifically, I think eco-chic is being really intentional and conscious about the effects of the way you design your clothing, but still having it be aesthetically pleasing to the eye.
Cool. I'll go next. Can you hear me? All right. I am Safiyya Karim. I am one of the country coordinators for Fashion Revolution South Africa. I'm not a designer. I'm an activist, in particular looking at the intersection of fashion and climate. And so for me, eco-chic really does kind of capture this idea of, as was mentioned, consciousness. I think when we think of fashion, it has all this negative impacts on the planet, but also on workers. And that's kind of how Fashion Revolution started, at this huge incident where several garment workers lost their lives. And so for us, when we're thinking about workers, they're often also at the front line of the climate crisis. And so eco-chic is fashion that protects the planet, but also the workers across the whole supply chain.
Okay, usually I go last because my name and surname starts with a Z. So I'm Zubeida Zwavel. I'm a director of a NGO called the Center for African Resource Efficiency and Sustainability. And I also have my own independent consultancy. I'm a sustainability strategist. I've been around in the sphere for 22 years or something. My gray hair shows it. I've been in every manufacturing industry, commercial industry, where we try to save water, energy, become more efficient, produce products that are less impactful on the earth. And I landed up in fashion and textiles, clothing and textiles for the last couple of years, where this has been actually spearheaded by the DTIC master plan, coming in connection with international projects that we're currently working with the United Nations in South Africa, focusing on textiles. And we have 3 country partners, South Africa, Kenya, and Tunisia. And fashion, clothing and textile, apparel industry is going to be the focus and has been the focus for many years. And Eco-Chic, to be honest, coming to that, it's the first time I hear of it, to be honest. So I had to Google it a bit. But actually what it means to me is to produce products and to wear clothes that are less impactful on the environment. That's basically it. To bear in mind, when we are walking around, that the clothing that we wear, that it has less environmental impacts, less social impacts, such as Safiyya said, people are actually labor conditions, all of those social impacts we have to bear in mind as well. So let me hand over to our next panelist.
So yes, my name is Alia Bear or Barre. So I'm from Niger, not Nigeria, Niger. We were colonized by French, not the English people. And I'm a fashion designer and based in Senegal. So for me, sustainability, of course, is by definition what African people are. By definition, from the beginning, we have been sustainable and we keep going this way by using what we have available. So of course there is some difficulties going on because like even as fashion designer, like just for us to produce a garment, it has nothing to do with all the know-how, the technologies and the fabric that are available worldwide. So even that for me is like being redundant, saying African and sustainable. But I think what the secret for our future, because the issue right now is how to stay sustainable and keep being sustainable as African, is to put a human being at the center. I've graduated, like my fashion design diploma was in Singapore. So I lived quite some years in Asia and in India, also in France, because I'm also quarter French. And I realized that the real issue right now is like people lost track of the humanity of what people like human beings are in the process of creating fashion. Everything that has been done is like putting the machine or the production or the cost at the center, forgetting about our earth and forgetting about the human being. So I think this is our future. Now to end up, for the Eco-Chic, this is why I mentioned my quarter French thing. For me, Eco-Chic is like keeping this kind of intemporal aspect. For me, when I created my brand, for me, I see it as a house of couture, like the old time in Paris and everything, like the Chanel aspect. Even Chanel with Karl Lagerfeld is like putting human being and like know-how at the center. Luxury doesn't mean, okay, they put luxury for a pricing, but the beginning to start luxurious thing was to put the know-how and the human people at the center. And I think that's what us as African designer have to keep going and emphasize and nurture for the future.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And I think staying with the idea of Eco-Chic, just on my side of work, and I guess it's borrowed in a way. It's not necessarily like an academic definition. I think for consumers, it's more about, obviously it's made of beautiful fabrics and sustainable fabrics, but is it beautiful? Is it wearable? Does it still carry that element that consumers like, which is the trend? And even though it cannot be as trendy, but I think women love wearing beautiful clothes. It cannot just only be made of just, fabrics and linen, and they want that linen to come alive, So I think Eco-Chic in my space in terms of a day-to-day for an everyday woman, that's what they want to know. They are willing to wear linen, but they also want to feel stylish. They also want to feel like they stand out when they walk into a room. So it goes against the academic definition. So keeping with that in mind, I just want to ask Danayi, in your space as a designer, how do you then balance the idea of Eco-Chic and designing items that are beautiful and that are sustainable? How do you balance that?
I think, to be honest, I've always been drawn to beautiful things, as you mentioned, right? People want to wear beautiful things. And similarly to her, I always say, sustainability wasn't something that I actually looked for. It's something that found me. I always share the story about how I came up in Zimbabwe, right? And there's so many social, economical things that come up against an independent designer such as myself that I had to look for solutions. I had to figure out ways to be resourceful. But in looking for these things, it actually then brought to mind the way my grandmother functioned, the way my mother functioned, the way my aunt functioned. So as a matter of fact, it's just a way of being. So in actuality, I wasn't trying to be sustainable. Now what I was trying to do was to create beautiful clothing with the sustainability skill set that I already had, that was already innate within me and within my society and the way we function. I think at the very beginning of my career, I'd often go to the flea market. A popular flea market that we have back home is Avondale Flea Market. And I think it was in 2010 thereabouts, I went, and there was like this bottle top bag that one of the artisan crafters made. And in my mindset was, this is so high fashion. So for me, it's always been about reframing what we consider high fashion. Even when you look at my storytelling approach, I'm the type of person that will take a bingo basket, which is often known to be used either in the kitchen to sieve whatever rice or peas or peanuts you might have, or you can use it as a decorative item in your home. But I decided to bring it into a fashion context and make it high fashion. Who gets to determine what is high fashion? And I think for me, I play a lot with that sort of conversation within my fashion work of what is high fashion to us and who gets to claim what high fashion is. And let's start to redefine that and actually expand that conversation to include even our own practices and the own things that we have within our immediate sphere. E.g., the bingo basket, the bottle top bag, which is more of like a home decorative item that I actually made a runway accessory piece. So that's sort of how I've always sort of approached design. I've always approached it with a why not aspect. Why can't this be high fashion? Why can't this be luxury? And all of it has always been sustainable.
Thank you. Safiyya, I'm going to move on to you. In your area of work, how does Eco-Chic manifest? I know you guys deal quite a lot with activism. What are you seeing? What's some of the reflections that you can share with us?
Sure. So I think from our side, we spend a lot of time on education and awareness. I think with the kind of growing information age, right, there's a lot more that we have available at our fingertips. So I think consumers are also more aware and more conscious, but at the same time, they don't really know what their options are. And I think a lot of questions we get as well is, where can I shop sustainably? And it's like, it's a difficult conversation because for everybody, it looks different, right? And I think what we try to do is more of that kind of education and kind of empowerment. So having conversations and workshops so that you can understand what does sustainable mean to you, and looking at your wardrobes and trying to make your clothes last longer. It's like simple things that you can do so that sustainability and eco-chic can become more accessible, because I think it often has this kind of connotation of being something privileged or unaffordable. You know, sustainable fashion is for privileged people who have the kind of money to spend on these, like, you know, big fashion brands that can use, you know, more sustainable fabrics, etc., and pay their workers well, etc., as they should. But obviously, consumers face the brunt of that, and it's difficult, and they feel like they can't participate. And so we try to have those conversations to show you that you can, just by loving your clothes again, taking care of them, making them last longer, exchanging your clothes with friends. So we do those more kind of community-driven initiatives, but also trying to put the power back in consumers' hands and reframing them as citizens. So a lot more of the kind of advocacy work in terms of holding brands to account, so that we can push for change that we want to see in the industry, because brands, ultimately, they exist because of us, right? They're making clothes so that we can consume, and we can often feel powerless in a conversation, but we do have the power, and that's what we try to do. And that's, I think, how we try to take this conversation beyond just an understanding of sustainable fashion.
Okay, thank you. Zubeida, I'm going to move on to you, and I'm going to touch on this idea about how, like you were saying, you just Googled eco-chic. These terms that we create on the ground for ourselves, and what, you know, the true sustainable journey for each business it's supposed to be. Do you feel like these type of things, do they derail business? Should we be sticking to the academic way, not, and I don't want to say academic, but like the true meaning of what sustainability is? When we come up with these terms that we create for ourselves, do you find that, do that derail business in terms of the mission?
I mean, to be honest, if I was a business in today's manufacturing industry, it's not easy. If you had to be a business 10, 15 years ago, you didn't have neighbors complaining, you didn't have consumers, maybe voices as loud, you didn't have the same amount of stakeholders that you have now. And for that, I would take my hat off to any company, any fashion designer, forging ahead and making headway and being prosperous in that. But, taking that into consideration, that sustainability is 3 areas. It's not only looking at environment, it's not only looking at economics, and not only social things. It's all of those 3 things, and it's like you're a juggler, basically. You have to try to juggle all of these aspects. So hence it's difficult, and hence people think, this is redundant. Why am I doing this? It's, I want to grow jobs. I want to do many things. How am I going to do that if everybody telling me I have to cut my costs, I have to be resource efficient? And that is a myth. We can decouple economic growth from environmental degradation. We can ensure that designers are still environmentally less impactful, that they use, for example, dyes and chemicals that are materials that are less impactful and less harmful. We've got much more knowledge on board. I mean, recently I found out that recycled wool is less impactful than organic wool. I mean, something as, it just seems like, we would go for the organic route always. So those types of information is at hand for us right now. And this provides new opportunities, new innovative ideas, sustainable materials, chemicals to be used, less waterways, waterless projects. We spoke about, Cape Town specifically is an arid, very, very arid. We faced zero water crisis, a couple of years back. We have an energy crisis throughout South Africa. So these things have to be kept in mind, and we have to be responsible, not only as a company, not only as a fashion designer, but also as a civil society, as a consumer. As we walk into any company, if I go to Woolworths, I want to question, where does this come from? Is it made in South Africa? Yes, I feel good about that. What type of material is it made from? Organic, recycled? I feel even better, right? Less virgin materials. So there is ways and means for us to create opportunities for having less environmentally impactful products, at the same time creating jobs, sustaining jobs, and growing our economy. Because there's the new circular economy that also provides different types of opportunities, from fiber to fiber textiles, from taking this jeans and goes into landfill site, maybe taking it out of that landfill site, instead of going to be, the chemicals gets leached out of there. It then gets shredded up, become fibers, and becomes another jeans for someone else to wear, or maybe you purchase the same jeans back again, I don't know. But these types of innovative ideas are all out there. Traceability, AI, everything is at our fingertips.
I'm feeling attacked about my jeans, guys. I will not disclose whether they're sustainable or not. But I will thrift them and I will swap them with someone, I promise. Thanks, Zubeida. Okay, so I just want to, Alia, I think I'm going to move on to the role of sustainability in Africa. And one of the things that I wanted to discuss is, you run a house of luxury, and what have you learned so far, from running your business, some of the sustainable practices? What some of the reflections you can share with us in running a business like that? What does it take to, make it sustainable for what it's worth, even though not every system can be 100% sustainable? What are some of the reflections that you can share with us, maybe even for someone who wants to start a business like that of luxury and comfort?
So, as we say, the terms of being sustainable is very wide. You have the sustainable in the way of like being money worse, because designing and having a fashion brand is complicated. Most of the time people don't say that, but fashion house who are profitable are not that many. Let's be honest. Most of us, like even during COVID, a lot of us like suffered and struggled a lot. So this is very important also to be very transparent about that. Even people, like it can be possible visibly, like you will do the storytelling and everything, but at the end there is no money like making you live every day. But at the end of the day, sustainable mean also being able to live from your passion and from also your ethical attitude towards the business and towards the planet. Then you have also to be sustainable towards the planet. So me, I'm trying to focus on those two aspects, and there is no magical potion or no magical how do you say it? Sorry, with my French I have a tendency to put French words, but
magic pill.
how to say equation. So me, I had to learn to adapt to the conditions. So for example, for me, I decided to be sustainable. First of all, I will not have a brick and mortar shop. I don't want one, because first of all, it's a lot of costs, fixed costs. Then you have to showcase, you have to put light, vendors and everything, and air conditioner, because we are still in Africa. So this has an impact, right? And this has a cost. So I decided I don't want to have this hassle. I want to produce. This is my passion. So I'm just selling through concept stores. By this way, I'm sending my shipment. Every time I have an occasion, I send my shipment. I don't put plastic bag. I find a way to have the gelatin plastic so that it's biodegradable, so that I'm trying to get every plastic out of the practice. So when even people are not happy, like sometimes the concept stores are like, you don't ship enough. I'm like, yeah, but I'm actually creating a need of people, because afterwards, in 1 or 2 months, you're going to tell me, oh, we have some extra. We have to do a sale. What is funny is, like, for example, I just launched a collection in August, because you have to understand, in West Africa, we have a lot of specific holidays. We have the Ramadan. After the Ramadan, you have the Eid. So you have to do those collections to fit to those things. So we end up doing 7, 8, 9 collections a year. So as soon as you launch one, not even 3, 4 weeks after, they ask you, okay, it's over. Can you do a sale? Sale is not sustainable. I'm sorry. So my thing is, I don't do sales. So my customer know I don't do sales, or the maximum sales I will do is like 20%. Because also being sustainable is also respecting the customer. So I don't put a big margin on what I'm doing. So I'm checking my fabric cost, my worker fees, like how I pay them correctly, and everything. And as I do everything, also like I'm also sustainable towards me. As a single mom, I have 2 kids. I want to spend time with my daughters. I want to be able to do my work properly, but not sacrificing my life as a mom. So I decided, as I say, a house and atelier as before. I put everything in my house. My showroom, my workshop, everything. I adapted my life to my passion, and so that I don't have to sacrifice anything. But I also trying not to sacrifice the cost for my customers. So I put a margin that is reasonable. As I say, I will never sell something that mentally I cannot buy myself. It's very important. If you yourself, you are not convinced of your selling price, how do you want to convince someone else outside, right? So at the end of the day, so for me, it's all those aspects. Not doing a sale. If the customer want a dress, don't find it at the end of the season. I don't do a promotion. Also, something is like the prints. I don't put seasonal thing. As I say, for me, my things are intemporal. So if this year this print was there, the next year the print can be here in another way. And I don't produce a lot of them, so that my customer are always in fashion towards my brand. I don't advertise too much also, so that people don't really know what was this collection was last year, 2 years, 3 years. I don't care. This is just a clothes. This is something I created, something I loved, and something that is supposed to be worn. What the hell is going on? Like three months after you are out of fashion? What the hell? Like my daughters right now are wearing some clothes that I bought 20 years ago, and they are still accurate. So it's about not buying more. It's about buying less, but better.
I love that. That is so true. And I love that you saying that, you have to be sustainable to yourself as well, because I think we forget that there are people there's someone creating, there's a mind behind the business, and that person also gets tired and fatigued. And if you do not release yourself from the pressure of go, 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 then what is the point? Then you're just creating out of, the lack of passion, Dania, and what about you? What have you learned? What are some of the observations that you can share with us from your design journey?
In terms of
your business, like
Okay.
when you design sustainable practices, like some of the reflections you can share with us, just for someone maybe in the audience who's starting a business or in that journey, how to balance that. What have you seen in your space?
So my approach and what I found is sustainable for me is actually not to churn out as many collections. I actually only release one collection every year or every other 2 years. So I put a lot of focus on sort of having a very understated aesthetic, which sort of like surpasses trends, because trends change all the time. But if you have sort of like a classic understated aesthetic, it transcends time and age, so it can live even 5 years from now. You'll find that I released a collection in spring summer 2018 from my Ode Toscana, and there was a pair of trousers that I had. I'm still retailing that trousers today. And it's funny because I'm an independent brand, my growth is small. So you'll find that maybe in the local market, people will come to me and ask me, Danayi, when are we going to get a new color? When are we going to get something new? And I keep telling them that nobody knows me yet because I see myself as a global brand. And until I feel like I've reached the scale or the magnitude where, okay, now my brand is known, now these clothes are known, then perhaps I will consider maybe introducing something new. But I've always treated myself like a small baby in an ocean, like a little fish in an ocean. And I'm trying to see the entire ocean, and I'm taking it one step at a time. So I've slowed down my procedure. I invest more time in creating timeless pieces with sustainable materials. Materials are huge to me. So initially when I started, I worked a lot with the dead stock, and then I focused on linen. And then at some point I realized that because I'm working with dead stock and linen, one, linen can't be found in Zimbabwe. We don't grow it, we don't weave it, we don't manufacture it, and dead stock runs out. But what do we have accessible to us that is grown in Zimbabwe, that can be woven in Zimbabwe? And you're starting to see right now that I'm using a lot more cotton. The cotton that I use is grown in Zim. It's woven by local artisans. And that's now what I'm looking to distribute, but I'm slowing down that process. And I'm also looking for suppliers, retailers with specialized boutiques that cater to that. So for me, it's not so much about trying to entertain people, because I realized I got caught up in the trap of entertain us, give us something new, catch up with the trend. But for me, what was happening, it was depleting me as a creative, because I couldn't keep up because I was one person playing multiple roles. And because I understood that right now I am everything in my business until I graduate to a point where I can employ more people, I need to manage it in a way where I have a lot more control and I can distribute the product in a strategic way to the right people in the right quantities that I can manage. Because ultimately, when you are an independent brand, all you have is your brand image. Right? So I'm looking at even this opportunity for this platform is for me to market myself. So there are even events that I participate in where I'm not necessarily looking initially for a monetary gain in that instance, but I'm looking at what does this do for my brand? It builds that image, then also builds the value around my brand. And this comes back also to self-respect, because what I used to often struggle with within my brand was I would actually underprice my product just for people to purchase it. And in the day, I was actually working for free. So now I'm trying to build my brand so that people see the value in the product that I've created and actually pay the actual value for the product. And I think one conversation that often doesn't happen around within the sustainability space is the financial aspect, and how I totally agree with you when you say people first. Because if you can't even sustain your own livelihood, if you can't even pay the team and the artisans that you speak for and represent through your clothing, then what good is this business? And that's actually when you find people, that's actually when you see a degradation of society, a degradation of nature in itself, because then the earth is also won't be maintained by those things. You find that people end up going and doing the craziest things to survive. So ultimately for me, it's people first, and then it's design. If I can't sustain myself, if I can't sustain my team, then I'm not succeeding at being sustainable.
Yeah.
I think I'm also going to add into that, and then after that, I'll ask Zubeida to give us advice. I think from my platform, what I've noticed as well is that, and it speaks to what both of you ladies have spoken about, from a consumer point of view, most of the women don't wear the clothing that they're in their wardrobes. They just shop and then they sit there and they sit, and we've all, have fallen into that trap. So you're right in terms of, producing less, and what is the point of all these trends. And you find that most of the stuff that women buy, most women don't understand their style. They're buying because Jessica has it, or Alia has it, or Danayi has it. They all want to be seen. We're buying for belonging. We're buying to, just to keep up with the trends. And obviously, as we know, then social media has added another layer where people are terrified of repeating outfits. And as a result, so they're buying and buying and buying because I will not be, seen with the outfit that I wore the last time or that I posted and all of that. So all of those things from a consumer point of view, I think they end up putting the designers under pressure of saying, what's new, what's new, what's new? Why do you still don't have the new collection that has landed, So I can go on forever about that. But to Zubeida, what advice would you give then to this journey, this story that we're talking about in terms of businesses? How, from your experience, what would you say works, or what would you say you've seen practices out there in terms of other businesses or strategies, sustainable strategies that business can implement?
I think the two fashion designers and luxury houses that we have on stage here are perfect examples of sustainability that works. I'm so impressed to hear that, and people say, oh, animal print is in. I've been wearing animal print every year whenever I want to wear it. Stripes are in, I wear it when I want to wear it. Dots are in, you wear it because you feel whatever, happy today. So that's the thing, is that exactly that people are not able to establish their style first and foremost. I was lucky enough to be reared by a mother that respected quality over anything. After a while, I realized, okay, no, I can't always afford the best quality, but now having shoes of 20 years, my daughter, that doesn't want to be pointed out right now, but she's sitting in the audience, she's, goes into my clothing closet all the time, looking at shoes, leather shoes, whatever it is, trying to find things that they can wear. And that is the nice thing about, I think, also the new generation, Gen Z, whatever they are able to then see the impact as well. And they realize, so therefore thrifting has also become quite important. Establishing your own style, obviously, is quite important. For businesses to go ahead, I think is just to maintain that ethos, family values, to ensure that, like you're saying, people-centered, ensuring that you pay good wages, the social impacts, but also you have to make money, right? Otherwise you're not a company. So then you're an NGO like me. But you have to make money. So how are you going to make money? By selling things, by coming up with new ideas. Last year in Paris, we visited one of the companies. This guy was making sneakers out of pineapple fibers, grape fibers, all sorts of cactus fibers, and everything is produced in Europe as well. So there's huge opportunities in South Africa at the moment as we speak. There's the opportunity to use banana fibers as a textile. The woman is using banana fibers for sanitary pads. These are things that are, once again, innovative. If you want to diversify your product range, obviously, then you can stick with what you have and then also try to bring in more sustainable materials. Just ensuring that one of the companies, for example, that we work with, and I think a very good example as a retailer is Cape Union Mart, where environmental sustainability is at the forefront of everything they do. What they've realized is that the machinist that works in one of the factories that produces, for example, poetry clothing, these machinists are aging and they are not going to be replaced because guess what? It's not glamorous to be a machinist. People don't want to, everybody wants to sit behind a desk, behind a computer. And they started transferring those skills to the people that's existing. So everybody within their organization have worked in different departments in that company. So they've realized the value and the asset that they have of those people. And they've also built training schools. If you go to one of the biggest factories also, they have huge training schools to embark and to rather impart that knowledge as well. So looking at, once again, ensuring first and foremost that you are making money. Staying true to yourself, I think, as a company. Just emulating that. And I think people will follow suit. If you're passionate about what you do, people will follow suit. And you will stand the test of time, with classic things. You don't have to wear beige linen to be an environmentally friendly person, right?
Get me started.
I was at the Global Fashion Summit. I was in Copenhagen 3 months ago. And yes, animal print was actually in at that time. And literally, there was a woman and her daughter dressed in animal print from head to toe. I was like, whoa, this is quite trendy, I must admit. It's in my face right now. So, and every other person. But yes, trends are nice and it's nice to follow people, but I think more individualism. And as the panelists before us, the African fashion film industry provides a huge opportunity for us to show that individualism. And our fashion designers are hugely, they produce these amazing garments that you just, it's jaw-dropping, that you're not going to find in the city of Paris or Amsterdam. And this we need to applaud and we need to be proud of that. So.
No, I love everything you're saying. I'm even losing track of what I want to say because I'll take forever. But I'll start with the idea about why I started Fouura is because I realized that people were starting to associate sustainability with everything that is calm and linen and nude, and if you don't look that beige, that means it's not sustainable. And that's why I love what people like Alia are doing with just having luxury brands that show women that it's not just about looking beige and you're eating vegetables the whole day. It's there's more, you can still have style, you can still look beautiful, you can still be yourselves, But also what you're saying about poetry, they are, Cape Union and particularly poetry, they are really, really on a beautiful journey in terms of sustainability and the things that they're doing. And, they've selected, for example, if I have to insert myself in there, Fouura, my brand, as one of the change makers in currently now in South Africa in terms of the work that we're doing. And there's all other people. Some people are doing homework, safe study, and some are on NGOs for period pains and things like that, a whole lot. But what I'm saying is that they are championing this new way of how retail can also be part of the people, It's not just about selling, So I think I'll leave it there, guys. Otherwise, I'll start saying things. Safiyya, so we're almost towards the end, and I'm wondering from your side, how do you think consumers and policymakers and designers can work together in the space? Fashion Revolution is a global platform, and I'm sure you guys have some insights in terms of what other countries are doing and how they've managed to work with retail, because that's where the challenge is, right? Trying to bring the retail and the policymakers within the retail and the consumers as well to buy into that. So what can you share with us?
Yeah, it's a difficult process. The fashion industry has become just this massive beast, right? It's just globalized industry, and I think it's also become so stuck in its way, and it's created all these silos, right? In terms of where fabric is extracted and then processed and then turned here, dyed there, and then cut up here. And even with labels like made in South Africa, we also have to interrogate that, how much of it was actually made here, right? And then there's just so much that the fashion industry needs to do to change. And I think that for the small designers and the slow fashion brands that are trying to challenge the model and do things differently, it's very difficult, and they take on a lot of that expense. So as was mentioned already on this panel, to pay workers fair wages and source fabrics that are kind to the planet, it's not cheap. And at the end of the day, you also want to run a business that is also financially sustainable. And I think that's where government and policymakers can really come together to try and support local designers through, subsidizing wages, or even just making, investing in infrastructure so that we can have localized textile production so that we can actually source locally. But beyond that, I think the future of fashion is also changing. And I think there's more interesting work in working with new innovations around textiles and working with waste as well. And so that you can reduce the environmental strain on virgin fabrics by just repurposing existing textiles to make bolder, exciting fashion products that are not the, linen, beige kind of things that we have in mind, right? Because the fabrics that do exist, while they've been potentially made from polyester or other fabrics that are not considered sustainable, the energy and the water and everything else has already gone into it. And so that is, a lot more sustainable than making something new. And so I think Fashion Revolution can play a big role as well in bringing all these different voices together to understand what are these challenges, and how can we work together to overcome them and also just kind of achieve the same mission at the end of the day. We all want to have clothing that makes us feel good, look good, but also that we cherish and can wear for longer periods of time, but still also express our individuality and our identity. The problem with fast fashion and these trendy fashion is that it's also perpetuating a certain type of fashion, right? That's not necessarily South African or African, right? And we're losing our own identity, and then we can buy into the system because we haven't kind of formulated our own style or idea of what fashion means to us. And so so I think for consumers, it is really about challenging what the fashion brands are telling us, like the big fast fashion brands, and then having that awareness around what goes into the fashion process. I think a lot of us don't realize how much of work it takes to just even turn like cotton into fabric from that plant, and then getting it into a garment and then in your wardrobe. I think we've become so alienated from it because of how removed and siloed everything is. And so that education and awareness is a big part of what we try to do at Fashion Revolution. But there's definitely a lot of work that needs to happen to get all these big stakeholders together, because for the fast fashion brands, while their model is unsustainable, it's still surviving it's working for them. And so as long as they're still making money and profit, they're not necessarily going to change. So really the conversation to get them on board is difficult, because even when they do try to make changes, I'm always just a bit hesitant to trust whether it's actual change that they want to do and are convinced about doing, or if it's a tick box exercise of, we need to have a certain number of sustainability related words in our impact reports. So we're just going to have this talk and have this person there kind of thing, or release this collection. And I think we need to be more skeptical and challenge what's being fed to us. But it's difficult because it is so globalized and entrenched as well. I think more conversations really help, I think, as well.
Yeah. No, it's a difficult one because, the other argument says that, if the designers and the makers, the retail, the people who make all this, I guess, fast fashion, they need to be able to take it at the end of the day. If we don't want to use it anymore, if you're tired or you don't know what to do, that whole thing of, take back schemes, So this whole argument about who's responsible for creating this waste? Is it the maker or is it the consumer? So it's always just a difficult one.
Yeah, but I mean, the fact that fashion brands don't like to publish their production volumes already tells us a little bit about who's responsible for it, right? Yeah. And I think that they like to make us seem like we're responsible for the overproduction, but it really is coming from the top, I think, because of how the business model is set up, production and growth and profit, and that also needs to change.
Yeah. So I'm going to give the audience a chance to ask questions before we close. And I'm wondering if there's anyone who would like to squeeze in a question to our wonderful ladies. Anyone?
Hi, thanks so much. I think that's working. I have a question for Zubeida. I wanted to know, do we have any factories in South Africa or Africa that are actually making any next generation materials yet, or is it only happening overseas?
At the moment, the banana fibers I told you about, that's actually
Yes.
happening. The fiber to fiber textiles is also happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where is
so
this
that's
happening?
exciting. So I'll have to keep it a secret for now
Okay.
because I don't know. But it's happening in South Africa. They're looking at specifically cotton and polycottons, breaking that up and making it back into fibers that can be actually reused into textiles again. South Africa has lost a lot of skill. That's very sad. And not recent, probably 15 years ago, 90s to early 2000s, in the textiles industry. I was part of this project, and this woman closed down her doors, and she's ran the business for 20 to 30 years, for example. And she was an Italian, her father was Italian. They started up in Garankuwa, if you know Garankuwa in Pretoria, a really derelict area. Probably gave jobs to about 200 to 300 people in that area. Closed down because they were not getting support and they were not getting the volumes from their clients, retailers that they were getting, and they were producing the most amazing weaves, like Hertex types of fabrics, like these, upholstery fabrics. And it had to close down, and many of this has taken place through many, many years. That is just the sad thing about South Africa. And also, we had the CSIR lab that also produced a lot of the research for this next gen type of fabrics and textiles and research and development around that. And that closed down in Port Elizabeth. But with these different types of projects that I'm working on, United Nations, the DTIC sponsorships, and the UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organizations, is all subsidizing projects, looking at research, trying to give companies the best options when it comes to circular business models. So definitely things are happening in South Africa. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Someone else? One more question? No? You have one more? Oh, okay.
It is true indeed. The fact, the thing is like the way that African consumers, especially the youth, have endorsed the telephone, because there are issues about like a lot of things by the phone or whatever, the bank thing, but with the mobile being integrated has given them access to buying online, like just the example of just paying online connected, like your payment accessibility connected to your SIM card is something so huge that it's even an example in terms of marketing in Europe and in America, because like it given access to even the people from like a very humble background to be able to buy everything. And the thing is, like recently I was reading things that Shane has more than double in the last year his production and everything, and that actually what we have produced in terms of garment, the fashion industry right now have produced enough garment to sustain the humanity till 2100. So can you imagine? And like us, our generation, Africa is the next growing population, and they are craving for to consume, but they want to consume things cheap. They are not. And I think the secret, like our only way, our only hope as African is educating people to understand, to consume a better way, because they don't want cheap things they see online, they see on TV, and they want the same thing done in US or whatever, no matter what it costs, even if the brand are fake or whatever, they just want to have just a drop of this window that they see outside. And they are just and this way there's a lot of e-commerce that have started. Everybody can start an e-commerce right now with WhatsApp or Facebook. They just post picture of things that they bought in Turkey and China, whatever, and you send the money by your phone and they deliver it. You never see the people. They deliver you at a fraction of the price. So you have your local chain everywhere now in Africa, and definitely it's a huge market, but this market is not going towards the sustainability for sure. Sorry.
Yeah. And Alia, in closing, I'll just start with you while you're at it. What would you, any last words that you would like to share to the conversation?
Wow. Last word. Like, there's no magic. Of course, things when you see globally, you have a tendency usually to look a bit like to be overwhelmed by all the sad facts that we have. But the thing is also, like, for me, I see that we are kind of light workers, or like we show the way, and it's not easy, but like every single drop of hope that we are putting there. And like when you were saying that some knowledge has disappeared in one generation, and I see in my country, in Niger, there is some know-how in terms of weaving one generation off. So it's our responsibility, every one of us as creatives, to try to put it back. And by buying, like by sustaining, like with the last collection that I've done, is like buying the right price with the weavers and everything. It's not perfect, but just trying, at least trying, is already the beginning of something. So I think like nothing is perfect. I eat meat, I consume things, I have plastic, I take planes, but at least I'm trying my best to have a positive impact in the way I can.
Dania?
Yeah, I think sustainability should be also looked at in context of where you're at in your life. It could even be your LSM, the region that you come from. I think a lot of times we try to adopt the West's mindset and approach to sustainability in Africa. And then when we try to do that, it's actually not sustainable for us because we're not even in the same economical plateau as they're at. Their challenges are so different from the challenges that we face here in Africa. So I think it's very important to look at it in context. It's also important to look at it as a journey, and a journey has different stages. So we don't want to beat people and say, oh, bad you're not achieving all the sustainability goals. But I think look at your journey at where you're at, and then at each stage, graduate. I think ultimately our pursuit should be to improve and to do the best that we can with what we have where we're at today. And so that's how I always look at sustainability, is that today, am I being intentional about the choices that I'm making with what I have, with the resources, whether it's financial, whether it's the materials, whether it's the people? How am I managing all these different elements at the stage at which I'm at today? And tomorrow, if I have more available to me, I should graduate and do better. So, yeah.
Safiyya?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of scary things happening, and the facts around, like, the growth of the African youth population and where trends are moving with e-commerce and the ultra-fast fashion giants, and potential exploitation that we might face on our continent, and also just all the challenges generally faced by the industry. I think we also have an exciting opportunity on the continent, and even in South Africa especially, because we don't have all of these structures either, that we can do things differently. We can be more circular in how we design things and more authentic to what it means for us to be sustainable in the African context, as it's also like something that we've done before. So I think, yeah, the future looks exciting, at least for me. And I think that I always like to encourage everyone to also take the conversation outside of these spaces as well. I think we can all come here collectively and share these ideas and all feel the same way, but there are so many people out there that don't know how, what's going on and what impact they can play as well. And just also reminding yourself that even just by going back to your own wardrobes, finding ways to restyle what you already have, etc., that you can still participate in the sustainable fashion space without even having to spend any more money, and just trying to get that message out as well, because sustainable fashion shouldn't be something that's inaccessible, and also shouldn't also be within these confined spaces.
Zubeida?
I have absolutely nothing to say. I think
all
the
taken
women before me said everything. And I must say that I'm quite honored to sit on this panel and to listen to designers that, have everything that if they can just impart to other fashion designers as well. I'm just a little bit sad that there's not enough people in this room to really listen to this conversation. And it's such a critical conversation. And I think that what Danayi, sorry if I pronounce wrong, said about that sustainability is a journey. We forget that. It's not a destination. Once you get that to a certain point, you will find, okay, there's more things. The landscape has changed. The product range has changed. The materials has changed. So this is exactly why you have to keep going. But to be transparent about that journey, that is the most important thing. And, many companies don't label themselves as sustainable or circular, but they are actually doing so much in the context of Africa. And this is something that we need to start elevating, talking, marketing. We had Saris for Change that had a fashion show earlier on. Those types of things where, I was in Japan a month ago, and I bought these second-hand kimonos for like dirt cheap, but it's absolutely stunning. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to cut it off a little bit, and it can be a nice cloak for me when I go to a religious ceremony or something. And it's stunning, stunning materials, and they're literally selling it for like 300, 400 rand. And it would be going to landfill spaces. So rethinking, like Safiyya says, just what you have in your wardrobe. It should be accessible. Sustainability should be not something that is a myth. It's a responsibility of all of us to do at the end of the day. And I was just happy to participate in this hour. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all your contributions, ladies. And I think from my side, it's that's why we are passionate about teaching consumers and educating consumers. I find that space quite interesting in terms of them understanding what fashion waste looks like. I find that the conversation is happening everywhere else in companies and retail, everywhere else, but we've forgotten, or no one is having the conversation with the consumer. But my takeaway, and I think how I would like to close the session, is for moms and for dads or parents, we have to teach our kids about what fashion waste looks like. It's so important. And the reason why it's so important, I was reading an article that was talking about how some of us, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, if the landscape continues right now how it is in retail, they will never grow to understand what true fashion looks like. They're only gonna grow up with fast fashion. That's what they're gonna associate fashion to be, where you buy things that are made of cheap materials and then you wear it for 2 minutes and then after that you get rid of it. It's just so important to bring back those, just the conscience of just wearing things for longer, appreciating what you're wearing, what true style, personal style looks like, and slowing down your buying. But most importantly, once you've bought the stuff that you've bought, how you wear the stuff, how many times, how they live in your wardrobe, so important. But ultimately, what happens to that garment? How do you discard it? We don't just buy things from the shop so that they sit in our wardrobe. We don't buy things from the shop so that we just dump, in the landfill. So, and I think that triangle, it's something that we need to start bringing back into our homes and making them understand anything that you bring at home it needs to have a responsibility of why it's there, and it's your responsibility to release it in the most responsible way. So I'm just so passionate about just making people understand how fashion waste looks like. I think they see it in the dumping, in the landfills or dumping areas, and no one really kind of like calculates how all of that happened, you know? And as we know, we're wearing our clothes less and less than we did 30 years ago. So it's so important that it may not seem as critical as COVID, but I think it's shocking how all of our wardrobes are full of clothes that we don't wear. So thank you so much. And this was just such a privilege for all of us. Thank you.